I'll happily answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Jules. Can I start with a question of my own? I saw there was a couple in the chat. You said that the first thing we need to do is to offer to write a plan. So that's kind of step one. And then assuming they say yes, then you go and do it. But my question is who is the we? It's almost step zero. Do we have to have a formally constituted entity to do that? Because we're a bunch of people who've got, common aims here on this call, but we're not, we're not a community benefit society or anything else. What do we need to be to ask that question in the first place?
That's a really good question. You don't need to be anything other than a member of the public. I would recommend that there's at least a bunch of you, because otherwise it's going to be a very lonely journey. But the rest of you can build as you go. I mean, you can start off with an individual, a group, a bunch of friends. You can be and then on the way to incorporation, you can be an unincorporated association of individuals. You can start a bank account. There may well already be an organization or organizations in the local area that would be willing to help be the delivery partner. But the first thing is just to get it in the minutes and get that sort of resolution passed. Can I go and write a plan? Can we go and write a plan? So yes, you don't need to be a legal entity or fully incorporated to ask. Rosalind.
Could I ask, are you working full time on this? And is anybody else at IFAR or anywhere?
Yeah, sure. So I do spend an awful lot of time on it. It does take an awful lot of capacity, and previously I was kind of 24/7 Extinction Rebellion. I'm receiving a little bit of money from the Climate Majority Project to help incubate this, to help it scale. But that hasn't paid. So it's been all volunteer activity really to date for this activity, the workshops and what have you. Apart from the little bit of funding we got from the National Lottery. So again, it's really important to consider capacity. But it's also really important to consider how we do pay ourselves moving forward. Again, I'll refer to Jamie, the mayor in Newcastle. I was up in Newcastle. I was volunteering a lot, and he cautioned me about how much I was volunteering, and said, "Jules, you deserve bread on your table as much as the next man, because otherwise you end up poor and hungry and can't pay your rent." So that's why it's important to consider the economic activity that sits alongside it. And between us, hopefully we can set up economic enterprises that generate revenue that can help pay for some of our social aspirations. But in short term, I guess it's like setting up a company. It's not sweat equity. There's no equity involved, but yeah. Ideally, you want a bunch of people that want to make something happen.
Thank you.
Judith?
Hello. When we first started up our group of Bromsgrove Climate Action, we actually got from Friends of the Earth a plan which they had drawn up, a community action plan, which to present to the council. One of our group adapted it so it was more specific to Bromsgrove, and it was probably the wrong way to go about it, but we contacted every single local councillor by email. We only got explaining what we were all about and all the rest of it, and asking if we could meet, and we only got about 4 or 5 responses out of the entire council. And we did go and meet them, and they were very encouraging and all the rest of it. But would it have been better to arrange to go to one of the council meetings, the full meeting, and bring up that then?
I would suggest, yes, it's always better to do it at a meeting in public, and also ask for a vote, because it kind of puts people on the spot. They have to choose. We supplied details of what we're asking to vote pre-meeting. That's really important, because otherwise they will say, we can't possibly vote on what you've said today. We need to think about it. It's interesting that Friends of the Earth provided a plan, It's probably a very good plan. They're very well funded. They're very well organised. But I think the difference here is asking support for the community to be able to go and do, and probably the Friends of the Earth plan was asking the council to do something. That's
Yes.
harder. Councils are tired like that, and as they move like icebergs. They move really slowly. So this is allowing the community to go and do it, and I think most councillors are kind of like, oh, phew.
But we're only allowed 3 minutes if we're members of the public presenting something, and I think it would come as a shock if we asked for a vote. I'm not saying it's not possible, but 3 minutes isn't very long to address the subject. You get 15 minutes, so it could be 5 different aspects of 3 minutes each, but usually they make people share the time.
It's a very good point, Sue. Yeah. I've frequently only had 5 minutes at the end of a meeting. Very important to put it in writing beforehand, like I say, with some documents. And then when you have your 3 minutes, you can just state, the United Nations has declared code red for humanity. I'm very pleased to see that, our respective councils declared an emergency. We'd really like to support you in your aspirations. Can we write a plan? So hopefully succinct enough. But yes, you frequently only get a small amount of time. Janet and Chris.
Thank you. I assume that your district and county councils employ maybe a full-time or 2 part-time climate change officers, as Bromsgrove does. Do you find them helpful? Do you work closely with the staff?
I think we're really lucky in Suffolk. Because yes, the cabinet has employed 7 people to work on their climate emergency plan delivery, and it's called SCEP is the acronym. It's Suffolk Climate Emergency Plan. So there's 7 people, and I work very closely with them now. And in fact, we have collaborative action working groups that include members from other anchor institutions within the community. So that includes the universities, the colleges, the district councils, the local enterprise partnership, and I'm one of the community representatives on the collaborative action working group. So I'm finding it to be really fruitful at the moment, and I'm actually really surprised and pleasantly surprised at the veracity and the quality of the work that I'm seeing. Although it's a steep hill to climb, and we still have to hold them to account. And actually, I think what Suffolk are doing might be an exemplar and a model for others to follow. So I have been trying to encourage them to publish more. So we are looking at avenues to publishing through the local government association to actually provide a roadmap for other local authorities. Because often it's not a will, it's more not knowing how, or not having the imagination. So yeah, generally it's a pretty healthy working environment, I think. Thank you.
That's really good. Yeah, the nearest we have to that, I guess, is that we do have the climate change working group. We have produced that action plan, which you were not very impressed by, and some of us are not too, because it doesn't go into quite enough detail of the future actions and how they're going to get there. And I think that is because we do have a lack of a really good ginger group, if I may call it that, like yours. The parish councils, well, I happen to be a parish council on district at the moment, but the parish councils don't seem to talk to the climate change officers very much. One came to address us at a parish assembly, but that was the only time that we really had very much to do with them. And there is just this lack of kind of working together. So how many people in your group actually get to have regular meetings with the climate change officers? Is it just yourself, or would they be meeting with as a group?
Sure. So our collaborative action working group meets monthly. Within that, we then have, and this is a county council initiative, and within the collaborative action group, there are district councillors and, like I say, representation from anchor institutions. We then have sub-working groups, which include finance, communications, community, which are 3 that I'm in. I think our community engagement officer is very, very active, meeting with parish councillors and other community groups, and regularly meets with us. And actually, some of the actually some of the activity they've got planned, I think, is quite remarkable. There's, they're setting up a youth parliament and going to have an effectively youth citizens assembly in Suffolk, which is fantastic.
Yeah, fabulous, well done. And I think that we've got to go that way too. Absolutely, yes, and open up to the public. There seems to be a kind of suspicion of the public in some ways with some councils, certainly including ours. And most of the decision making is done at cabinet level, which is not a mixed political cabinet. It's a majority party only, and the portfolio holders seem to. Well, we are lucky in that we did have a portfolio holder for climate that actually has been meeting with BCA regularly, but some of the portfolio holders don't have a great deal to do with the public, so that's, yeah, thank you, that's really useful.
But the work group only meets now 3 times a year, which is useless.
So I think it was Chris and Rosalind.
Well, a lot of it's already been said actually from the councillors, but I mean, my feeling is that if you went to the district council and said, "Can we produce a plan?" they'll say, "We've already got one," but of course they're keeping it very much themselves, and then not involving people at all, and it's not a community thing.
Yeah.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Chris. It's not a community plan, and what we're asking for is, can we write a community climate action plan? Yeah, how do we participate in this process? They've written a plan that covers the council operations and what's in their sphere of influence, but what's the vast majority of carbon emissions are not within their sphere of influence, whereas
exactly, I've been telling them that all the way along.
Yeah, exactly. So so can we write a community plan? Can we help you? It's really important, it's really important that we phrase this as we're positioning it as a bit of being helpful to deliver their policy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No problem. Rosalind and then Jerry.
Just to take up Ian's question on the chat, have you helped any towns at all, and what was the reaction in Liverpool to your ideas? Liverpool being a town.
I'm not quite sure where Liverpool comes from.
I thought that this event where Jerry met you was in Liverpool.
Oh yes, so but that was yes, but that was a kind of a meeting of like-minded climate activists at Bidston Observatory rather than any kind of public event for Liverpool. But yes, you're quite right. Have I done it in any towns? No, this is pretty much brand new in terms of our activity. I've got an upcoming meeting with an organisation called Our Futures. They're based in Grimsby Football Club. And in terms of general kind of community organising activity, I have spent the last 5 years pre-pandemic up to the end of the pandemic organising in Newcastle. I was part of the campaign team for the Metro Mayor, help develop policy and manifesto policy, and the core tenets of his policy manifesto was declare a climate emergency, hold a citizens' assembly, and as part of that, we had a Green Industrial Revolution event at the Discovery Museum in Newcastle, and have had some very high-level I personally have had some very high-level discussions, with the deputy leader of Gateshead Council, who are not part of that combined authority, but again have sort of some really good aspirations. Certainly in terms of the Northeast and the Mayor of Newcastle, Jamie is committed to being the home of the green industrial revolution.
And can I ask, with regard to Newcastle, the Saudi Arabians are now putting money in and putting it in not just the football club, but the whole community. Has that kind of linked over to what's being done by the mayor and initiatives of yourself?
Money from oil, Sue?
Well, I have no idea what.
Scandalous.
I mean, I've heard.
Son's an ardent supporter of Newcastle United,
Yes.
but
I mean,
he is amazed at what they're achieving in the community. and he can't understand the kind of their logic, but it's happening.
That's probably a bit outside of my area of expertise, in that I know the Saudis have bought football clubs, just like Russian oligarchs have bought football clubs. I'm not aware of any relationship between the mayor's office and any
So
Saudi.
things like food banks. And
It's news to me. I know I haven't been in Newcastle for a couple of years, so post pandemic. But it wouldn't surprise me, because they've got a lot of money and they like to bury some of their some of their human rights abuses and terrible stuff they're doing with fossil fuels with token gestures in the community. I mean, I personally, I don't think that's a fabulous thing, but that's my own personal opinion.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah, if I can go. As you were telling your story, and it's occurred to me before as well, you talk about these workshops, your people's assembly, and I'm wondering how important, actually, practically, in everything you've done, has it been to have your own pub, where you can just meet? Would we struggle if we don't have a place where we can do things?
No, I think it's been helpful, because it's handy to have a conversation over a pint, but you could do that in anybody's pub, really. We've only held one of our events actually in the pub, and the pub probably wasn't best suited for it. And actually, we hired village halls to do the other ones, and they were better venues. So it's a really interesting question. But the community climate action planning is one of a number of things happening sort of around the pub. So I don't think it's essential. But I would advise you all to go and buy a pub.
There is a community pub, as you know, in Finstall, if we wanted a community pub, and I'm sure they would welcome us there.
Brilliant. There we go. You can get involved in that.
awesome.
Invest a little bit in community shares. Ask them about their green plan, and if they would host some conversations about community climate, about community climate action planning. They should be very aligned, because it's expensive running a pub because of energy. So that makes it really difficult. And also they're very aligned in terms of community ownership and actually doing something in the community. So it'd probably be a fruitful place for conversation.
Jerry, the XR members who are going on to another meeting, their meeting starts at 8:15, so we've still got quite a bit of time. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, so my next question is more to everyone. I see that Edwina has just asked it in the chat already for me. Maybe we need to get our heads together and have a chat about this next week. Shall we do, because this time does seem to work for people, shall we have a meeting, same time next week, to, decide, what we ought to do next, and how we get it started, and how we pitch it to the council and when, because we've got a lot of people on the call who know the ins and outs of the council, and how to get things on the agenda. I feel I need to do a bit of reading up of what we've already got. Is that the next thing we should do? Is have a chat amongst ourselves about what we do next?
Next Thursday, Chris and I are going to the big one.
Of course, yeah. So maybe 2 weeks' time. And
we would need 2 weeks to digest all these slides and things that Jules would send to us, I would have thought. Could I ask whether Marion has any reactions, please?
I just guess I'm really interested, obviously running a charity that has an environmental aspect to it. I'm interested in the idea of making businesses, because that's what we do. We make quite a lot of our own money. We don't make all of it, and there are very good reasons for that, because we like to get grants as well. And if we make all our own money, we won't get any grants. So you have to have it. I think I was really intrigued by the whole idea of the retrofitting business. And I was down in North Suffolk not that long ago, a couple of weeks ago. Wish I'd realised that that's where you were. I might have had a little wander around. But I think understanding more about actually how you're doing things is really interesting. I mean, in the back of my head, and I can't actually sort of commit to this, because obviously I have to talk to trustees and our directors. We are at the moment sort of in the process of reviewing our arts and MEMS, because our environmental bit is quite restrictive, and so are some of the other bits. but we could widen it, and therefore we could act as an overarching organisation to hold everything together. Certainly in the first few bits. We are also the hosts for the asset-based community development community builders that are in Bromsgrove. And that sort of seems to fit, because that's all about community action, getting people in the community to get up and do things themselves for themselves, rather than waiting for other people. And that's, I mean, I guess, just so people are aware, our community builders have been in post now almost 18 months. And it's quite a struggle to get people to do things, to come together, to meet together, and then to get off the ground and actually take stuff forward. We've had some really good successes, but they're quite sort of few and far between, because people are used to having things done to them.
Sorry,
And
could you
to
repeat
change
what
that mindset is difficult.
Sorry, Marion, could you repeat what took 18 months?
So getting people to understand that they have the ability to answer their own challenges. So if they want to do something, they can do it. They don't need permission from the council to do lots of things. They can just get on and do it. But actually, because people for decades have had everything done to them, if you go off and do something of your own accord, then you're seen as a little bit of a maverick. One of my community builders, for instance, has gone around Rubery planting plants. And when she tried to get people to do it legitimately, shall we say, with community gardens, wasn't so much interest. When she made it a little bit sort of illegal, and sort of spoke about planting bulbs in St Chad's Park under cover of darkness, suddenly everyone wanted to be involved. So, which is really interesting. I find that a really interesting concept, that suddenly people are all being going around planting things in all sorts of places because they think they shouldn't be. But yeah, I think there is an element, and we mustn't underestimate that, because it is, and I can see why, working within the parish, actually, because parishes are usually quite small, so it's a bit easier. Really good example of a parish pulling things together is Clent. So in the past, I think in the past year, 18 months, they've built a parish hall, a village hall. Yeah, they've got the money together and they built it, which I think is amazing. And that's been done very quickly, but that's because there was people with a common purpose. And I think the other thing is, so one of the things I sort of said in my intro in the chat was that I'm very interested in, if people are hungry, if people can't afford their energy bills, if they can't pay the rent because the rent's gone up, how do we engage them in something that might seem sort of quite far away to them, because actually they can't put food on the plate on their table, and that's all they're worried about. They're not really worried about 1.5 degree temperature change, especially if it means there's nice hot summers. You know, it's that sort of thing. So there's also that element, I think. It's about, there'll be some education stuff as well. So I don't underestimate the challenge. I think it's a really interesting piece of work, and I'm really, you know, I'll be following your progress, Jules, because it's like, I'm like, oh right, okay, that seems to be really good. We're a furniture reuse project and a computer reuse project, and we're really interested in the circular economy. So I thought it might be also interesting if we have a conversation outside of this about the circular economy and how we get people really engaging with the circular economy, because everybody can do that almost.
Absolutely. I mean, so I'm actually talking on the 21st, before I come down to London for the big one. On the 21st, I'm talking about the circular economy at Suffolk University Sustainability Institute. I think you mentioned some really interesting things there about common purpose. You know, when you have a common purpose, things can move really quickly. And, you know, how do we reach these non-traditional audiences where, you know, there was a piece of graffiti in 1938 Germany, which was first food, then rent, talking about food strikes. And when it comes down to it, you know, the price of broccoli is tripled, or price of cauliflower is tripled. And so it's hitting the poorest hardest now. I mean, price of bus has gone up 20%, you know, so these are the conversations that we need to be having about how we build resilience to protect the most vulnerable in our communities. And I'm delighted to hear you've got, you know, so you potentially be a custodian for asset-backed community development, because that's really what also what we're talking about here is an asset backed. Land, property, energy, retrofit, they're all asset backed. So yeah, I'm sure we'll have some fruitful conversations.
And there's a huge waiting list here in Bromsgrove for allotments. So, you know, just
Yep.
something simple like demanding more allotments. And each parish council, if more than 6 people come together and ask for allotments, they are duty bound to provide them. So, you know, we could do it. And it would be really good to work with some parishes, some parish councillors too.
An allotment is a really important thing. It's a small place to grow flowers or vegetables on, or it's the award or gift of something. So it's your allotment. And yes, it's hard fought and hard won. The right to an allotment from a 28-year political campaign. Chris, let's go.
Yeah, having spent all day on the allotment, it's interesting. Thank you. Yeah, I'm surprised actually. Very interesting comments from Marion, but she mentioned that she's got a food bank there as well, which is very significant, I think. Anyway, I wondered, Jules, if you come across the power station thing that's happening, with the 2 artists in South London.
I know Dan really well, yeah.
Oh, do you? Oh, right, okay. Yeah, I've been sort of supporting them as well, and I think it's an incredible thing. And it's very interesting what Marion was saying about doing it yourself. This is the main, I think that the main message here, that we don't hang about, that we can actually make this happen, and we can make funding. I mean, they printed their own money and did all sorts of weird things, but basically it's crowdfunding. It's crowdfunding that they did, really. But they're an extraordinary example, if you haven't come across them, of 2 artists who decided that they could make the whole of the street that's sort of like a power station, and their local school into a power station, and actually fund retrofit. But one of the things that I think they've really got going for them, which perhaps Bromsgrove hasn't, is this idea of community. We're not very good at community, I don't think, in Bromsgrove. Having tried to get our climate conversation started last year, I went round and knocked on doors, and 1 or 2 other people helped here. But it was a bit of an uphill battle. And I think really this thing about having your own farm and your own pub and whatever is a sort of a hub thing for the community.
It is a great catalyst, yeah. Walthamstow, where the bank job is, and also where the power station is, I think they're the most indebted place in the UK. You know, so they're quite poor communities. So I think that, you know, again, bringing the communities together is really interesting challenge. Sue.
Well, I wanted to say is there is perhaps an opportunity if a group got together, and this may be a subgroup of the group, the drilling that they're doing to find get electricity from under the ground, which is meant to be a community project, but we were shocked in council. They cabinet announced it was going to be put to commercial company to run. We did object at the time, and if we could, if a group got together, they could put a rival bid in, because they haven't, as far as I know, called for actual companies to take part, but their intention is to use an ordinary electricity commercial company to manage it, which it seems to me there's an opportunity there where if the community decided to maneuver and take it over.
So you said to get electricity from under the ground, don't you
Well,
mean
I'm sorry,
water?
The district heating network.
But the pump thing that they're planning to do.
Source heat pump.
Thank you. Thanks. My words leave me. I'm saying I'm getting senile.
No worries.
That's just over the fence from where we live in
Sure.
into an aquifer.
But
That was what I was talking about.
But actually, that's quite right. Bromsgrove is extraordinary in the sense that it's got this huge aquifer underneath it, and it doesn't actually make sense, in my view, to go for air source heat pumps on every house. It makes much more sense to do a community ground source heat pump.
No, but they've already decided that all this electricity would go to the
Yes, but they have. But
Yeah.
she's quite right. I mean, we should be thinking about putting in a community project and on these lines.
Yes,
Yes,
very
yeah.
Maybe a local electricity bid, a smaller one, using the local electricity bill legislation, rather than taking over a huge water project.
Just as a little thought, I'm a member of the partnership board, the Bromsgrove Partnership Board, and there is a subcommittee of that, which is the cost of living crisis book a group. Now we're starting to look at what's going to happen next winter, because that is looming. So I'm sort of thinking there are different places that we can hang this on. There are hooks to hang this on. So if you're thinking about that energy, Acton Energy are part of the cost of living crisis and the partnership board, and are always looking for different ways of doing things. And I'm just wondering whether, rather than just sort of going in, are there sort of ways we can go through sort of a back door almost to get through and say, actually, we want to do this. Can we do this? How do we put our bid in? I'm already on so I sign up to where they put their tenders. So the tender will come through to me when it appears. I don't think it has appeared. So I'm just sort of thinking there will be others who may not immediately appear to be our friends, but actually are and would want to be involved in a bigger project and might actually have the expertise to undertake the project. With all due respect, I mean, I don't have the expertise to undertake. I can do a business plan. I can do lots of things. Wouldn't know where to start with that. So, it's like, are there people out there we could gather in and say, look, we're really interested in doing something like this? And they have, if you like, sort of greater value with the council. So Acton Energy are really respected by Bromsgrove Council.
Yeah.
So if we could engage with them, then you might find that journey's a little bit easier.
As long as they see conflict of interest. But time is absolutely of the essence, actually, Marion, on this, because I have a feeling they've already chosen the company that they're going to work with. So we really need to get a move on.
Yeah, the thing is, though, it was, from what I understood from the council meetings I've listened in at, the whole project is to provide energy to the hospital and the schools, and is it Asda in the first stage? It's not to provide energy for everywhere, and also the fact that it's going to cost £1 million a mile to put the pipework in. So it's quite a big project, because they're moving the hot water from the aquifer. As I understand it, they're having that pumped through to heat the council house and what.
But Edwina, I feel that's just the limit of their ambition. That they're not looking further, because they haven't any money to do anything with it. They haven't the will. This is why it's just in public buildings owned by the council. So some, an initiative needs to be grabbed to expand it. There's no reason why not, possibly.
Yeah, but again, it's public money. It's public money being used, isn't it, for heating public buildings, but not having anything for the use of the general public.
And the council house is a long way away. It's only there are 2 schools that are close, and lots of housing. Otherwise, it's all this expensive pipework.
Well, I thought the point of bringing the private company in was that it was going to be almost like a PFI. Is that not true?
Yeah.
That there isn't enough money, public money. There will be some grants, absolutely. But I think they're wanting some private money in as well.
Yeah. I don't know, because we've been cut out of the loop. Obviously, we got our group got cut out of the thing with the climate working group.
So we only know what we found, we learnt last year really, and nothing more recent.
We don't really know in the climate working group either.
No.
Sorry, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that I don't think there's any very concrete things we can say, right, this is the obvious next thing to do other than to agree to meet up. So what I'll do is I will keep this WhatsApp group going. People can leave if they don't have any further interest in it, but you can invite other people into it. I'll give it a new name. I'll think of just maybe Community Climate Action or something like that. But I'll keep it going as just a vehicle for, you know, doing a poll for where we're going to meet next and what our priorities are, so we can have little bits of chat about that. And are you happy? You can ignore it half the time, Jules, but would you be happy to kind of stay in the group and give us little bits of mentoring or advice, if you if you can have a glance at it every now and again?
Yeah, I'm happy to stay in there. If you need anything specific, let me know. But yeah, I just want to say thanks to everyone that's given of their time on a weekday evening to come and listen to what we're doing. So really appreciate it, everyone. And
thank you.
Well, thank you,
Really
Jules.
interesting.
Yes,
Thank
it's
you.
fantastic.
Very good. Thank you, Jules.
Thank you, Jules.
And thank you, Jerry. Brilliant.
Thank you much,
Okay.
very much,
Brilliant.
everyone.